The feeding of the 5,000 story can be found in all four Gospels: Matthew 14 and Mark 6 and Luke 9 and John 6. The sermon title today is The Feeding of the 5,000 and the Near Invisible Unnamed Boy. John 6, 1 through 14. After this, Jesus went to the other side of the Sea of Galilee, also called the Sea of Tiberias. A large crowd kept following him because they saw the signs that he was and what he was doing for the sick. Jesus went up the mountain and sat down there with his disciples. Now the Passover, the festival of the Jews, was near. When he looked up and saw a large crowd coming toward him, Jesus said to Philip, "Where are we to buy bread for these people to eat?" And Jesus said this to test him, for he himself knew what he was going to do. And Philip answered, 6-month wages would not buy enough bread for each of them to get even a little. One of Jesus' disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, said to him, "There is a boy here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. But what are they among so many people?" And Jesus said, "Make the people sit down." Now there was a great deal of grass in the place, so they sat down, about 5,000 in all. Then Jesus took the loaves, and when he had given thanks, he distributed them to those who were seated. And he also gave the fish, as much as they wanted. And when the people were satisfied, Jesus told his disciples, "Gather up the fragments left over, so that nothing may be lost." So they gathered them up, and from the fragments of 5 barley loaves left by those who had eaten, they filled 12 baskets. When the people saw the sign that Jesus had done, they began to say, "This is indeed a prophet who is to come into the world." God's word for us today. Let us pray. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts and minds be acceptable to you, O God, who is our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. I must say that even extroverts would be exhausted at the feeding of the 5,000 scene. Actually, commentaries think it was closer to between 15 and 20,000 people, with women and children. Can you imagine a church event here at First Presbyterian Church, Napa, that feeds 20,000 without any prior planning? Yikes! What we know is that up to this point, Jesus' fame was spreading throughout the land. Jesus was growing more and more popular with the people. And up to that point, no one had performed wondrous miracles like Jesus had performed, and no one had spoken with authority like this teacher. People everywhere wanted to be in the presence of Jesus, either to reap the physical benefits like healing, the spiritual benefits like preaching, or the social benefits like connection and acceptance from a loving community. I wondered before in reading this text at the compassion Jesus had to muster for the crowds that afternoon. I wonder if all he really wanted to do was be alone, especially to grieve after learning that his cousin and friend John the Baptist had just died. It's amazing to think about all of the people that Jesus must have healed or taught or sat down to listen to in the middle of his own profound grief. Grief and life make us tired. Jesus was most definitely tired. He was probably both physically and emotionally exhausted. I don't think that large, loud, demanding crowds following you would give you very much peace. In order to pursue that place of peace, Jesus went to the other side of the Sea of Galilee and up a mountain, but that didn't work very well. The crowd followed him even there. But Jesus, being the compassionate Savior that he is, didn't try to escape. He began to make arrangements for the organized chaos that was about to ensue. I often wonder what behaviors Jesus saw to let him know that people were hungry. Were they cranky, loud, at each other's words? It's hard enough to imagine 5,000 men, plus probably 10 to 15,000 women and children, let alone imagine them cranky. Jesus also recognized that these people had larger spiritual needs than just this one meal. Yes, they were physically hungry, but they were also spiritually hungry as well. Jesus knew that the occasion of the crowd's hunger and the timing of God's provision would offer an opportunity to declare to the people who he was. This miracle would now show the people God's power. Jesus also knew that this event would give him an opportunity to shape his disciples' faith and shape his disciples' trust. With the crowd approaching, Jesus turned calmly to Philip and asked, "Where are we to buy bread so that these people may eat?" Such a great question. Jesus already knows the answer, but wants instead to stretch Philip's faith. Philip responds, 200 denarii worth of bread wouldn't be enough for each of them to get even a little bit. If I was Philip, I would have said, "You have got to be kidding me, Jesus. Do you see the size of this crowd? We don't have that kind of money. There's no way that this meal is going to happen." But Jesus knew exactly what he was doing when he asked Philip the question, and right on cue, Andrew located a boy carrying around a basket with 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. Just like Philip before him, Andrew analyzed the scenario with great doubt and asked, "But what are they holding up these fish for so many people? How can these 2 fish and these 5 loaves feed this many people? How is that going to work exactly, Jesus?" One of the reasons I love reading and exploring stories of faith is because you can focus on many different vantage points of the story. There's not just one way to look at the story and to find meaning. Sometimes the big picture is important, but sometimes the minor and seemingly insignificant characters in the story can arise. Usually when we hear the feeding of the 5,000 story preached or talked about, it's in reference to Jesus, the crowd, or the disciples, or the amazing miracle. And don't get me wrong, those are crucial pieces of the story, but we often neglect an important character of the story, the near invisible and unnamed boy. In the synoptic gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke, we do not see the boy, but in John we do. No one in the crowd would have thought that this boy mattered. No one would have imagined that what the boy was carrying in his little basket would not only be the provision of the moment, but the basis of one of the most significant sermons that Jesus ever preached. This was one little boy in a crowd with a little bit of seafood and a little bit of bread. But this unnamed boy had been chosen by God to be a significant piece of the Messiah's redemptive plan, not only for that day, but for the rest of human history. No one knew that after this moment that every man and woman and child who trusted Jesus and read the Bible would know this little boy. They would know exactly what was in his basket that day, and they would know how Jesus used him to show the people on that hillside about God's power. In reality, we will never know which little person, big person, smart person, disabled person, unnamed person, unhoused person, rich person, seemingly invisible person that God will use and how. We never know who God will claim and use in ways that we can't predict and ways that haven't even been intended. God knows us all. God knows where we are, what we have, and how we can be used. God is the divine creator over each and every moment, writing our stories. God can do eternally amazing things with the little fragments of our lives that we are carrying around and we tend to think aren't really worth very much. Whenever I think about this passage of Scripture, I always find myself wondering, what if that little boy had said no to the stranger who came and said that Jesus wanted his food? What if the little boy had run as fast as he could into the crowd and disappeared? What if the boy's parents said, "That's our food, leave us alone"? But the story didn't happen that way. The boy selflessly gave his small meal, and Jesus did with that meal what only the Son of God could do. Jesus did the impossible through an unremarkable kid in the middle of a very large crowd. And by the way, Jesus was tired. That's why he went away in the first place. This boy never received any glory, but what he carried in his basket had bigger and more lasting implications that he would ever have been able to grasp. We just never know what God will ask of us, do we? We never know when God will ask it, and we never know ahead of time what will happen when God does ask us for something. Will we give it or not? We never know how God will redeem the little bits and pieces of our one life and use those pieces to be grace for others. So why are there different versions of the feeding of the 5,000, the story in the Gospels? I suppose this is a little bit like asking, why are there different vantage points at Yosemite or the Grand Canyon? Yosemite or the Grand Canyon are simply too large and complex and majestic to be taken in from one and only one perspective alone. In the same way, the experience of Jesus is too grand to be limited to one perspective. For this reason, we are blessed to have 4 Gospels, 4 different perspectives of the feeding of the 5,000. Each evangelist tends to focus on a different aspect of the story. Interestingly enough, the miracle of the loaves and fishes, or the feeding of the 5,000 as it is called, is the only miracle, other than the resurrection, to appear in all 4 Gospels. This is an indication to us of the significance of this story, which teaches us that Jesus is the only food that can satisfy our hunger. Just like last week's gospel really wasn't just about the yeast and the mustard seed, and just like the week before that, where it wasn't really about just weeds and good deeds or gardening, today isn't really about just fish or bread or a picnic on the grassy hillside. Yes, absolutely, the significance of the near invisible, unnamed boy in John's story is important, that Jesus can use all of us, but there's one more thing. For me, the gospel, the good news, in the story of the feeding of the 5,000 is found in Jesus' short and simple response to the disciples. You give them something to eat. The disciples are still skeptical here. Really, Jesus? You're going to feed all these people? We'll see about that. But what Jesus says and what the disciples do is even more profound and powerful. You give them something to eat. In other words, don't send the people away. Don't look for a way out. Don't hope for someone else to do it. Don't wait for tomorrow. You give them something to eat. Sometimes we, and I mean all of us, like to complain about our situation. After all, we are living in one of the most significant pandemics of our time. We don't always have enough energy or willingness or ability or faith or love or compassion or whatever. We're skeptical. We're pessimistic. We're preoccupied some days and distracted and uninspired, insecure, and my favorite word, unconvinced, just like those disciples were on that day. They were unconvinced that Jesus could actually feed all those people. But just like the disciples in the gospel, Jesus gives us something greater than even our best excuses. He gives us more than just another miracle. What I hear Jesus saying is, don't wait for someone else to do it. Don't pretend you have the time or the skills or the resources to do God's bidding in the world. Don't pretend you're not qualified or capable. Don't put it off for another day or time or moment when it might be more convenient for you. Don't wait for me to do it in your place. You give them something to eat. Let's not wait here in Napa for someone else to do it. Let's not pretend we aren't capable or qualified or called to respond to the needs around us. And let's not wait for Jesus to do it all by himself. The near invisible and unnamed boy provides the beginning of the most heard about, large, spontaneous, unplanned meal in history. But after that, it is then that we hear Jesus command. We hear Jesus command the disciples to give the world something to eat. You give them something to eat, Jesus says. Friends, what can we give to the world today? Amen.